What's up gamers, this is Heroes21 and today I'm going to be doing my first speedrunning tech guide for Fallen Aces, which will be on one of our most commonly used techniques, dodge boosting. This tech has gone by a few names over the month since release, such as dodge dashing, just dashing, flicking, dash sprinting, and dash boosting, but for the purposes of this video, I'll just be calling it dodge boosting since that's pretty much all we refer to it as these days. Dodge boosting is used in both of the major subcategories, being no major glitches and unrestricted, and it really lays the foundation for pretty much every other piece of movement tech in the game, with the exception of a few obsolete techs. If you see the camera flicking in my runs or the current background footage, that's me dodge boosting. It's fairly simple to perform a dodge boost, but messing them up is also rather easy just due to how quickly the button sequence needs to be performed for optimal results. And one last thing I want to say before we get into how you actually dodge boost. I would strongly recommend that you rebind your sprint and dodge key, which should be one singular key, to a side button on your mouse if you have it available. I'm not sure if there are any better places to put it on the keyboard since I only have it bound to the side of my mouse, but it takes some crazy finger gymnastics to actually be able to pull this off if you're using the default key of Shift. Additionally, using the default key can exacerbate some wrist issues that can occur with dodge boosting, especially if you're going a little too hard with it. If you start to feel any pain in your wrist, I would strongly advise that you take a day or two off of running because, speaking from experience, it is not worth it. As far as actually performing the dodge boost goes, as I said, it's relatively simple. So the first thing you're going to want to do is turn 90 degrees either left or right from the direction that you want to move in. From there, you're going to hold either A or D, depending on which way you want to go, left or right, and you're going to press your dodge/sprint key to initiate a dodge. You're going to want to keep holding that key, whatever it may be, as you start to turn your camera towards the direction that you want to go in. And as you're doing that, you're also going to release either A or D and start pressing W. It's not absolutely necessary to release A or W, but if you don't, you'll be moving more at a 45-degree angle, and in general, I've found it to be a bit slower. From there, all you need to do is hold down that sprint key in W and just glide on out of the dodge boost. Now, I have noticed that it tends to be faster if you flick and press W sooner, so a higher mouse sensitivity is typically a good idea. This does only work up to a certain point, which will really depend on your current setup. I noticed that it's tied to frame rate in a lot of cases, where if you try to go from pressing D to W too fast, you might not dodge, or you might not end up going forward, or some other weird stuff will happen where one of the inputs won't go through. On the note of input issues, if you find yourself making a mistake over and over while trying to dodge boost, take a step back, try to do it a little bit slower. If you're in the middle of a run, just sprint for a little bit. Oftentimes, you're just kind of locking yourself into making the same mistake over and over again, and even just a second or two of a break can help you get out of that. This was a very, very common issue for me in a lot of my early runs. I'm a bit better about it now, but it is still a problem that I run into every so often, so figured I'd mention it. Let's get into a few tips and tricks and just tidbits that I've noticed about dodge boosting in my time running the game. First and foremost is that dodge boosting speed appears to be additive. There is definitely a cap to this, but for example, if you sprint into a dodge boost, you will come out of it going much faster than if you dodge boost from a standstill. This actually leads into one of the most difficult to pull off techniques that we have in this game, being clipping through walls, something that only two runners have been able to do with any degree of consistency, and even they would both agree that it is basically just slamming their head into the wall till it works. I have recently figured out what actually goes into clipping, and I'll be making a video on that shortly, but suffice it to say, I do not have the precision to pull it off that often. In any case, I generally prefer to sprint into a dodge boost because otherwise I find it hard to figure out if I've actually dodge boosted correctly or if I'm just sprinting. It's definitely faster to go from neutral, but I don't care. Next, a little bit of theory regarding dodge boosting that I want to get into is perhaps the most important factor of it for speedrunning, and that is going to be stamina management. Now, off the top of my head, I don't recall all of the details for how the stamina system in this game works. If you really want to see what's going on with it, somewhere in the speedrunning Discord, I went through the code and I posted a bunch of screenshots of how the stamina system works, how exhaustion works, but again, off the top of my head, I don't remember. If you guys want a guide for it, I'm more than willing to put one together, but not this time. Now, the reason stamina management is so important for dodge boosting is that it is far better to be running at a normal speed for a longer period of time and not have to walk than it is to have a much higher peak speed, but then wind up walking for several seconds because Mike is exhausted. Now, before you go blaming Mike for being an American who's out of shape, he's in very good shape for a detective. Have you seen how many goons that motherfucker beats up on a nightly basis? I mean, come on, you couldn't do that. In any case, disregarding the beautiful achievements of Michael Thane, the greatest detective to ever live, you really want to have about a second or so in between your dodge boosts. Now, this is just a general rule of thumb. There are cases where you're going to want to go even slower or cases where you're going to want to go even faster. A good example of the latter is once you're inside the Waltz residence on the first episode's fourth mission, because it's such a tight area and you're going to be opening so many doors that you'll have plenty of time to regenerate your stamina. Also, if you have a Bolt Elixir, like in the escape sequence for Mission 5, which you can't really dodge boost on, but we do a sort of pseudo dodge boost for, you can do it as fast as you want and really should because you're not going to be sprinting while you're holding Delia. On the other hand, going across the bridge on Mission 2, you're really going to want to adhere to that 1 second rule as best you can, if not even slower, because you will not have a chance to regenerate your stamina until you get to the end of the bridge and pick up a trash can. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to get into the stamina system in this video, and that is true as far as like actual numbers are concerned, but I will give you some basic info as far as how the stamina system works for dodging. First, it's worth noting that the first 2 dodges in a row will not consume any stamina. Now, once you get to that 3rd dodge, it will. Additionally, the first second or two, I'm not sure exactly what the time frame is, of sprinting will not consume any stamina. As a result, your first dodge boost should effectively consume no stamina. Your second dodge boost, any stamina consumed will come from the sprint, and your third and onward, you'll be consuming stamina for both the sprint and the dodge itself. One very important thing that I want to note is that the minimum amount of stamina you can have to perform a dodge in the first place, which, very important for dodge boosting, is 2.5-ish bars of stamina. As soon as you hit 2 bars, if you attempt to dodge, you will be immediately charged both of those bars and not dodge. Additionally, Mike will be put in the exhausted state, which prevents him from sprinting or dodging, therefore, no dodge boosting. Now, this is interesting given that dodging itself only takes 1 bar of stamina as far as I'm aware. This is probably just something for, I don't know, realism, because if you're really tired in real life, you're probably not going to be going at Mach 1. But regardless, in order to prevent Mike from going into this exhausted state, you're typically going to want to end a chain of dodge boosts with an action like opening a door, or mantling up a wall, or jumping and falling a decent distance so that he can start to regenerate his stamina. Once he starts regenerating his stamina, you go back to that first dodge where no stamina should be consumed for either sprinting or dodging. Now, outside of using it for just linear speed, One of the best use cases for a dodge boost is shown in my favorite level and category, being any percent episode 1 mission 4 no major glitches. If you have watched some of the runs on my channel or even just scrolled through it, you will see that quite a lot of them are on mission 4, and that is for good reason. It is bar none my favorite level in the game. Now this use is to change the direction that you're moving almost immediately. Fallen Aces has a base movement system that is very floaty when you're sprinting. So effectively, if you're trying to sprint around a corner normally, you'll typically take a wider arc than you intend, and compensating for this leads to Mike moving more slowly. By using a dodge boost, you can circumvent this because dodge boosting instantly cancels any momentum you have in a given direction and moves it towards the direction you dodge into. One of the best places I can think of where this is showcased is when you're coming out of the kitchen, you go through the dining room, and then you need to cut to the left to go into the, I presume you would call it a foyer. Doing so with normal sprinting would often lead to you running into the fireplace or one of the other obstacles in your way, but by using a dodge boost, you can quickly sprint over to the door, hit the interact button on the handprint on the wall, and then get back into the living room. There are a few other areas in Mission 4 where this is useful, but off the top of my head, that is the one that comes to mind. As for the final use case that I'm going to discuss in this video, dodge boosting can be used to access areas that you're probably not supposed to go into, but we still consider to be not major glitches, such as the bridge jump on Mission 1, where you skip the entire level, as well as the chandelier jump on Mission 5, where you break into Malone's office by jumping off one of the chandeliers, allowing you to not need to find the office key, and then you can just drop down, open the secret trapdoor with the piano button, and save Delia. Now, I will note that both of these are not guaranteed just because you dodge boost. Mission 5's is definitely a bit easier. It's really just going to depend more on how good can you line up the direction. In my case, not very well, which is part of why I don't speedrun Mission 5 that often. But for Mission 1, you're going to need a really good dodge boost as well as almost perfect direction in order to be able to hit it because of how far the bridge is from the roof. Anyways, that's about all I have to say on dodge boosting. I hope you found this video to be helpful and informative, and feel free to ask any questions in the comments below. Alternatively, you can find me in the Fallen Aces speedrunning Discord as well as the Fallen Aces modding community Discord, both of which are linked in the description, and both of which I check far more frequently than my comments. I do plan on continuing this series with a few more guides about our techniques. The next one is probably going to be on what is referred to as either the long or high jump. I would argue the latter is a bit more accurate, but a lot of players also use long jump, so probably use those interchangeably in that video. However, if people want to see a video on clipping more, then I am happy to do that one first. I will say that the clipping video is probably going to take a lot longer to produce than the long or high jump one, because that one is effectively just a modified dodge boost jump. It's probably going to be a lot shorter. I'm probably going to cut out a decent bit of information since a lot of it would just be going back over stuff discussed here. And the other reason behind that is clipping, besides just being very hard to pull off with dodge boosting, has a few obsolete forms that, even though we don't use them today, I find very interesting and therefore would like to cover. In any case, have fun and good luck with your runs.